The stage lights dimmed. A hush swept across the crowd. Then that bass line dropped. A pulse. A groove. A heartbeat that could raise the dead. They smile in your face. All the time they want to take your place, the backstabbers. It was 1973, and the OJs were unstoppable. 3 men in tailored suits, voices slick as honey but heavy as truth. Eddie Levert, with that fiery growl. Walter Williams, the smooth operator. And standing between them, the one with the angel's range and the sinner's soul, William Powell. Crowds only saw the sparkle, the sweat on his brow, the light in his smile, the way his voice made the room tremble. They didn't see the pain in his eyes when the curtain closed. They didn't hear the silence that followed the applause. Before the world called it soul, these men called it survival. They sang about love because they'd seen heartbreak. They sang about money because they knew struggle. And William, the quiet dreamer from Canton, Ohio, he carried all of it inside him like a storm dressed in silk. He helped shape one of the greatest sounds in American music history. And yet, his name would fade from the headlines long before his voice did. This isn't just another story about fame, music, or the price of success. This is the story of a man who gave everything to the music and paid for it with his life. William Powell, the soul the world forgot. But tonight we remember. Before the lights, before the fame, before the silk suits and gold records, there was Canton, Ohio, a small, working-class town where winters bit hard and dreams felt far away. In a tiny church on the corner of 10th Street, a young boy named William Powell sang his first notes high, pure, almost angelic. He didn't know it yet, but that voice would one day echo around the world. Music ran through William's veins. Like most kids in the neighborhood, he sang gospel on Sundays. But during the week, he was hooked on the new sound, taking over street corners and backyards, doo-wop, the harmonies, the rhythm, the feeling of belonging. When 5 voices blended as one, it was magic. And it was in high school that William met 2 classmates who shared that same spark, Eddie Levert and Walter Williams. They spent their nights rehearsing under streetlights, harmonizing until their throats went raw. They called themselves the Triumphs, dreaming of making it big, even when the only stage they had was a dusty gymnasium floor. William was the quiet one, smooth, polite, with that effortless high tenor that made girls blush and made other singers step aside. Their first big break came when a man named Sid Nathan, who worked with King Records, spotted their talent. He signed them, but with a catch: they had to change their name. So, the Triumphs became the Mascots, a young group with big dreams and little experience. They cut a few singles, but none took off. For most artists, that would have been the end of the story. But fate had other plans. A Cleveland DJ named Eddie OJ heard something in their voices that no one else did. He believed in them enough to manage them, promote them, and even give them a new name. The OJs, he said. It was simple, catchy, and carried his blessing. The group packed their bags for Los Angeles, chasing a dream that seemed to shimmer just out of reach. They recorded songs like Lipstick Traces and Lonely Drifter. They sang backup for Nat King Cole, Small Steps Toward a Bigger Stage. But behind the music, reality hit hard. Money was tight, shows were scarce, and sometimes they had to walk miles to perform just for a meal. Still, William never complained. He was the glue that held the harmony together, the voice that lifted the group when hope ran thin. He believed in the dream, even when record labels didn't. Then came another chance, a meeting with 2 Philadelphia songwriters who would change everything: Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff. They saw something raw, something soulful in the OJs that other producers had missed. They gave them songs with meaning, songs that spoke to the Black experience, to working-class love, to survival. Songs like One Night Affair, and later, Backstabbers. By the time the needle dropped on Backstabbers, the world finally caught up to what William Powell and his brothers had been singing all along. Soul wasn't just music. It was a lifeline. From the small church in Canton to the stages of Philadelphia, the OJs had arrived, but the price of the dream was only beginning to show. When the OJs walked into the studio of Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff, they didn't yet realize they were stepping into history. Philadelphia in the early 1970 seconds was alive with soul. It wasn't just music, it was a revolution wrapped in velvet harmonies and brass horn. The city was birthing a sound that would come to define an entire era. Smooth, powerful, and unapologetically Black. The OJs were ready. They had struggled for years, endured lineup changes, rejection letters, and empty hotel rooms. But when Gamble and Huff placed that first demo on the turntable, a song called Backstabbers, everything clicked. The message was sharp, the rhythm tight, the groove impossible to ignore. At first, the group wasn't sure. "It's too different," they said. But Gamble just smiled. "Trust me," he told them. "This will change everything." And it did. When Backstabbers hit the airwaves in 1972, it wasn't just a hit, it was an anthem. That unforgettable chorus. "They smile in your face. All the time they want to take your place." Captured something real, something every listener felt deep down. The single shot straight up the charts, turning 3 singers from Canton, Ohio, into national stars almost overnight. Then came Love Train. The song's rhythm pulsed like a heartbeat, full of hope and unity, crossing oceans and borders. People all over the world join hands. It was more than music, it was a movement. For the first time, the OJs weren't just performing soul, they were defining it. Love Train became their first #1 pop hit, a song that still plays at weddings, rallies, and celebrations around the world. Money flowed in, crowds grew, and the trio's chemistry became electric. Eddie Levert was the powerhouse, raw, emotional, full of fire. Walter Williams, the calm in the storm, smooth and graceful. And William Powell, the quiet heart of the group, with a voice that could slice through any mix and make a crowd go still. William had a glow about him. Fans noticed the way he'd close his eyes when he hit those high notes, as if he was praying through the music. He wasn't loud or flashy. He didn't need to be. His voice said it all. When the group performed "For the Love of Money," that cry in his tone turned the song into something spiritual. It was a warning wrapped in funk, a reminder of the price of greed. By now, the OJs were everywhere. Platinum records, sold-out shows, magazine covers. They had become the voice of the Philadelphia sound, a bridge between gospel soul and modern R&B. But behind the bright lights, fame carried a darker rhythm. The late nights turned into longer ones. The drinking and drugs crept in, first as celebration, then as escape. For William Powell, the party was becoming harder to control. Still, he showed up to every recording, every concert, pouring everything he had left into the music. Because to him, the stage wasn't just a job, it was home. The 1,970 seconds had crowned the OJs kings of soul. But as their fame soared higher, William's health and spirit began to fade, a quiet shadow growing beneath the spotlight he helped create. Fame has a strange way of testing the soul. One moment you're on top of the world, the crowd is chanting your name. Your songs are spinning on every radio station, and the next, you're staring at the ceiling of a hotel room, wondering how the silence got so loud. For William Powell, that silence came quickly. The OJs were unstoppable in the mid-1000. 970 seconds. Their voices filled dance floors, living rooms, and car stereos across America. For the love of money. Give the people what they want, and let me make love to you. Were not just hits, they were part of the soundtrack of a generation. But behind the music, the fast life had taken its toll. The fame, the women, the pressure, it all blended into a blur. After endless touring and recording, exhaustion became the norm. To keep up, some turned to the nightlife for relief. The drinks, the parties, the drugs, heroin, especially, had found its way into the soul scene like a silent predator. William wasn't immune. He began to slip deeper into the habit, one that offered escape from the constant motion, from the weight of expectation. Eddie Levert and Walter Williams saw it happening. They loved him like a brother, but addiction isn't something you can sing away. William would miss rehearsals, show up late, or arrive visibly high. Yet, when the spotlight hit him, something magical still happened. His voice never faltered. He'd hit those impossibly high notes and make the audience forget everything else. But his body was breaking, even as his talent stayed intact. Then, tragedy struck again. One night, after a show, William was involved in a serious car accident. He survived, but the recovery was brutal. Doctors ran tests, checked for internal injuries, and that's when they found something much worse. Colon cancer. For a man barely in his 30s, the diagnosis was devastating. Still, he tried to keep it quiet. The fans didn't know, and on stage, he refused to show weakness. He'd smile, sing, and give everything he had, even when the pain was eating him alive. Gamble and Huff, the producers who helped make them stars, offered to slow things down, fewer shows, more rest, but William wouldn't have it. "The people came to hear us sing," he said. "I'm not stopping now." He meant it, but as the months went on, it became harder to ignore the toll. By late 1976, William could barely stand through entire performances. He would retreat backstage, clutching his stomach, gasping for air. The drugs that once numbed his mind could no longer silence the agony. His brothers in the group begged him to get help, to step away, but he wouldn't or couldn't. Finally, the decision was made for him. The OJs had to continue touring, and William's health made that impossible. The group brought in Sammy Strain as a replacement. It was a painful decision, not out of ambition, but survival. Even then, William kept recording with them as long as he could. In early 1977, his strength was gone. On the 26th of May 1977, William Powell passed away from colon cancer. He was only 35 years old. The news shattered the group. Eddie and Walter called him the soul within the soul, the voice that made the OJs complete. Fans mourned, but few knew how deep the loss truly cut. William Powell wasn't just another singer. He was the sound of hope and the reminder that even the brightest stars burn out too soon. When William Powell left this world in 1977, a silence swept through the halls of soul music. It wasn't just the loss of a voice, it was the loss of a feeling. That soaring tenor, the high, aching notes that could lift a song straight into heaven, were suddenly gone. And yet, somehow, it felt like he never really left. Eddie Levert and Walter Williams were shattered. The two men had built their lives around the harmony they shared with William, three young dreamers from Canton, Ohio, who once sang under streetlights and prayed someone would listen. Now, one of those voices had vanished, and the group's rhythm felt incomplete. It wasn't just singing, Eddie would say, years later. When William opened his mouth, it was like truth itself came out. The show, as cruel as it sounds, had to go on. The OJs brought in Sammy Strain, a seasoned performer who respected William deeply. Sammy didn't try to replace him, no one could, but instead honored his spirit by carrying the torch forward. Each night, when they performed Love Train or For the Love of Money, they could feel him there, in every harmony, in every echo that lingered after the final note. Fans felt it too. Even decades later, concertgoers would speak of William's presence like it was still on stage. They remembered the way he'd close his eyes, tilt his head, and let the note hang just a second longer than anyone else dared to. He had that rare gift, a mix of power and vulnerability, that made people believe every word. Behind the scenes, though, his absence haunted the industry in another way, through the ongoing battles over royalties and recognition. After his death, his family fought for years to receive what he was owed from Philadelphia International Records. The music made millions. William's estate saw only fragments. It was a bitter irony, the man whose voice helped define a label, now reduced to paperwork and unpaid promises. Still, time has a way of honoring what money cannot. In 2005, the OJs were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, a moment long overdue. When Eddie and Walter stood on that stage, they spoke William's name first. "He's here with us tonight," Eddie said, his voice trembling. "He always will be." The crowd rose to their feet in applause, not just for the hits, but for the humanity that William brought into every song. His influence lives on in subtle ways, too. Every R&B group that came after, from the Whispers to Boys II, Men carries pieces of that Philadelphia sound the OJs perfected. And within it, always, is the echo of William Powell. Clean, golden, unbroken. For the fans who grew up with backstabbers spinning on their record players, William was more than a singer. He was a part of their youth, the soundtrack to love, heartbreak, and every late-night drive home. For Eddie and Walter, he was family. And for music, he was proof that soul, at its best, is eternal. Even now, when Love Train plays at weddings or For the Love of Money opens an old movie scene, his voice glides through the speakers, soft, perfect, unaged. William Powell may have died young, but his sound, it never learned how to fade. Some stories don't end with standing ovations. They end in quiet rooms with an empty microphone, a folded suit, and memories that echo longer than any applause ever could. William Powell's story was one of those. He didn't chase fame. Fame found him in a voice too pure for the times, in harmonies that lifted entire generations out of heartbreak and into hope. But like so many gifted souls, he carried a light that burned faster than the world was ready for. The OJs went on to conquer decades, but even in their greatest triumphs, William's absence was a silent note beneath every chorus. You could hear it, that missing pitch, that lost harmony as if the air itself was trying to fill the space he left behind. And somehow, that emptiness became part of their sound. It gave their music weight. It gave it truth. In the years that followed, Eddie Levert and Walter Williams spoke often about the lessons fame had taught them about friendship, loyalty, and the cost of living your dream. But when they spoke of William, their tone would soften. There was gratitude in their voices, reverence. They never called him a tragedy. They called him a blessing that ended too soon. Because the truth is, William Powell's legacy isn't about how he died, it's about how he sang. He sang with the sincerity of a man who knew pain but chose joy. He sang like someone who believed that music could make people better, and maybe, for a little while, it did. Today, you can still feel him in the opening chords of Love Train, in the thunder of For the Love of Money, in every quiet whisper of soul music that dares to reach for something higher. His life was short, but his echo is forever. And maybe that's the secret of real artistry, to live without fanfare, to leave without applause, but to linger in the hearts of people who never met you, yet still hum your songs decades later. So, to William Powell, the voice that refused to die, the man who turned harmony into prayer, some stories end quietly, but dignity, like soul, doesn't need applause.